Paleblu on Reprezent Radio.
So, once again, Paleblu on Reprezent Radio. I'm here every first Wednesday of the month. Joining me now in the studio is a man that needs no introduction. His name is Bailey. He was the longest running DJ on BBC Radio 1 Extra, a resident of the legendary Blue Note sessions, a Metalheads resident, founder of Soul in Motion. Bailey, please say hello.
Hello.
Oh, that bed came in hot there.
Good evening.
Good evening, Bailey.
Thanks for having me on, man. This is a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for coming down, first and foremost. You're a very, very, very busy guy. And I know you're very busy with Sun and Bass coming up next week as well.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, for Sun and Bass, it's my 16th year at that event. I think I'm the only DJ that's been every single year. So yeah, it's well, there's reasons for that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm a very fussy guy, but there's reasons for that.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. It looks beautiful. I see photos and videos every year, and I have serious FOMO every time I see people at that festival. And you know, from what I've heard, it's incredible, right? It's
yeah. Well, you see, the difference is, I mean, we know there's 101 festivals at the moment. So many that someone says, "Oh, I went to such festival," and I've never heard of it. They're coming up all the time. I think even Nando's had a festival.
Yeah.
Other chicken shops are available, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of the difference with this is it's like for just over 1,000 people only, very intimate, and there's no backstage areas. There's no champagne popping off. There's no sort of hierarchy. Everybody, I mean, the most important thing there is the music, and people are there to experience the music, and whatever else comes with it. It's a very respectfully musical festival. I'm not saying that others aren't, but it's sort of always what I hoped that where the music would be and how it would be represented many years later. Yeah,
and that's brilliant. And I had the pleasure of playing at Hospitality on the Beach earlier this year, and going to another country to see people from various different cultures and countries enjoying drum and bass as a genre is incredible. And it's a similar kind of vibe, quite boutique, no backstage area, just all about the music, not about the whole cult of following behind it. It's just purely for the music. And they only released the full lineup about a week ago, right?
Yeah, that's right, and it was sold out before that, as it always is. Always sold out before they even announced the lineup. Yeah. So it just speaks volumes of
that's quite a phenomenon, right?
Like, it's very actually risky for the raver, because people book up flights, but they announce the dates first, then you book your flights, and then you'll get your villa or your hotel wherever you're staying, and then you've got to hope that you can get yourself a ticket when they release those, and they give you the actual to the second time when they're going to release it, and they go within. I think this year they went in about 6 minutes, 1,000 tickets.
Yeah, that's incredible. Let's kind of backtrack from Sun and Bass now. Let's talk about kind of, you growing up in London, because you were born and bred in South London. Am I right?
Yes, and I'm still in South London.
Oh, nice. So, okay.
To my dismay, I've got nothing against South London, but I want to feel like I've experienced other things in life.
Yeah.
But I do love it. The vibe seems to be just very, even though it can be edgy at times, it seems to be very natural and very comfortable. There's a warmth to it, and that's what I like about South London.
Yeah. I mean, obviously growing up when you were back then, you were kind of introduced to the rave scene from a young age, I believe. Like kind of house and breakbeat forming and that kind of thing. I mean, what was your first kind of major experience of clubbing culture or rave culture in London? What's your kind of first memory of that?
Well, I've been involved in the scene, or at least been actively listening to the music from when it landed in the UK.
Sure.
So everything was a very slow growth from early house days, wine bars, scout huts, wherever, in the fields, that sort of stuff, until it started getting more popular. People started realizing they could make big money out of it, and then the big raves happened, and then they were going into, when the criminal justice bill come along, then we were forced into clubs. But I've seen the whole development, so it wasn't sort of a moment where, wow, I've walked into it and there it is. It's sort of like I've kind of dipped my toe in the water as it's sort of grown. And I was a hip hop boy for that, like big time, save my lunch money, get an import once a week for £6, and just this excitement of this rave scene coming up is what sort of drew me in.
Yeah. And in terms of like, you know, the actual culture around it, and obviously coming from the hip hop perspective and the house and, you know, the acid house kind of movement and where it developed forward, when was like a key moment for you when you were like, damn, there's this new movement genre that's being born? You know, not a specific moment, or do you remember a particular track or... Well, yeah, no, I guess a moment when you kind of just felt like, okay, this is something different to what I've been listening to previously. Yeah,
well, you see, in 1988, which is a long time ago, of course, in 1988, my sister was going to college with the guy who introduced me to house music. And, because I was into hip-hop and I was doing all the scratching and stuff, I never really thought about actually mixing and blending tracks together. And my sister introduced me to her college friend, and I'd wake him up at his bed sit often a few times a week, and he'd wake me up. So he lived on the top floor of this house anyway, and he'd come down, open the door, go back to bed, and I'd just be on his decks mixing for hours. Now he had house music, you know, in 88, and this is when I started getting a feel for it, because the excitement and the techno-y sounds mixed up with the early break beats that went into early breakbeat UK house. That was an element of it. But it wasn't until 1991 when I actually went to a club night that he was going to regularly called Rage, which is seeing a resurgence right now with Fabio and Groove on tour doing celebrating 30 years of Rage.
Nice.
It wasn't until then, and I walked in the club, and just the atmosphere and just the lights and the music and the people, and you got to understand, I was going to a lot of hip hop clubs in those days, you know, and you step on the guys' trains in a hip hop club, and it could be a problem there, you know what I mean? In this club in Rage, I stepped on someone's foot and they're apologising to me.
Yeah. So
I just thought, this is a completely different feel and excitement all round, and I was just kind of, look, I need to get more of this. And then there's a guy called Horace who worked for a store that was in Camden Market called Camden Tunes, and he had a record store in there, had all the latest promos from all the current juggle labels, and I bought this white label off of him by a guy called Gerald, and the track was called Anything. The simplicity and the darkness of that tune mixed with the break beats, that was it. I just left hip hop behind, you know what I mean? Left it behind.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that track already. You sent it over to me. It's absolutely
ridiculous.
Incredible.
Ridiculous.
Obviously on the back end of the house and the acid, the breakbeat, and growing up in hip hop and stuff like that, let's kind of move towards your journey into working with metalheads. Was that your kind of like first industry into with drum and bass, or were you kind of like you're an up and comer and then it escalated into there?
Well, that was the first sort of moment when I felt like I belong to a serious crew right now. That was also, I mean, talk about chain reaction. So you had my sister that introduced me to Garfield. Garfield introduced me to MC Flux, who took me to Voodoo Magic in 95 actually, and he introduced me to Chemistry and Storm. And told Chemistry and Storm I was doing a pirate radio show on one of Garfield station, or Garfield station at NGFM. They tuned in, and then they contacted me and said, we are, there's a club night happening, would you like to be involved? And of course I'll do. I love playing. I'll play anywhere. I'll play in your bathroom if I could. Do you know what I mean? Because I just love playing music to people.
That's it.
So little did I know, this was the Metalhead Sessions, the original Metalhead Sessions in 1995. And I became part of the crew. And that's when it just really took off. Really took off.
I mean, that must have been phenomenal. And what I find very interesting about your story as well is like, I mean, maybe it's something that's changed over the years, but typically now it's very rare for someone who's just a DJ to get to the point that you're at. There's so much pressure nowadays to be a DJ and a producer, and be an engineer and be creating all of that stuff. You're a bad boy selector, like everyone knows that, and you've got to this place just purely off DJing, and I find that like incredibly inspiring, man. Like, being completely honest with you. Let's kind of move on to that, and then onto your experience working at One Extra. When did you start? Was that 2002?
Yes, 2002. Okay, so let's talk about the chain reaction again. So Garfield's one of Garfield's raving friends was a guy called Darren.
Okay.
Now, Darren was seeing a lady at the time who was getting involved in this new station that Radio 1 were interested in setting up. And he knew that I was a DJ, and he knew I did a bit of pirate radio. And in those days when most people had MCs on their radio shows, I didn't have any, and I didn't bother to call for any. I just sort of talked about my records. So he knew I had hosting ability. And then it was kind of, hey, come down to Radio 1 Studios and do some pilots for us. Let us see what you're saying. They basically shoved me in a radio room. They had 4 studios downstairs. They basically shoved me in one room, stick a DAT tape in. That's a digital audio tape for those that don't know what that is. And they just hit record and left me for an hour. So I thought it'd be a bit bland to just be talking about records. So I'd make up like top 5s and fake competitions and stuff like that. This went on for about 2 or 3 months. And then one day I just got this phone call saying, hey, we want you to be part of this new thing we're doing. It was called Network X originally. Yeah. And then when they launched, it was 1 Extra. And I went on to do 10 years straight on that station.
Which is, that's the longest running drum and bass show on 1 Extra and Radio 1, as far as I'm aware.
I need to double check Groove Rider and Fabio's, how long they were on, but maybe.
Yeah, which is, again, an incredible achievement. From a genre that is perceived as underground and, not relatively mainstream, although, in the past 10 to 15 years there have been records that have gone to the mainstream. For you to be pushing forward this label, was it a weekly show as well?
Yeah, every week.
Every week.
It started off as 2 hours on a Sunday.
It's a great achievement. And this is kind of moving on to like radio and stuff like that. Obviously the reason that I know you is you're a lecturer at Point Blank, which is mad. And the fact that we have training schemes, maybe 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have schemes where people get trained in radio or educated on the music industry is incredible. Yeah. Do you want to talk about like that a little bit, maybe? Well, what are your thoughts on that anyway?
It's amazing that we can have this now. In those days, the DJ was the guy who came in a transit van with the lights and the speakers. You know what I mean?
You made the DJ sound so dodgy there.
That's how it was. It was a 4 transit van. Yeah. You turn up with the disco lights and everything, and you played all night. 50 quid.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
That's it.
I never went through that phase, but I just know it came off the back of that. Yeah. Now, you got to understand in those days as well, when I started mixing, DJing wasn't known as a proper profession. It was just sort of something you did as a bit of a hobby for a little bit. There was also, DJs weren't included in the musicians union either. It just wasn't that big in that way. So to now have schools where you can just pay money to learn the skills is kind of incredible. And now you can see, obviously, it's a little bit behind us now. It's still kind of going on, but the superstar DJ era, it is kind of has been upon us. And it's something I would never have seen coming. Now with me and radio, the difference between DJing on radio and DJing in a club for me is the fact that you can tell stories about the tracks. You can talk the full history and, hey, do you know this sample? Here's the original. Now, you couldn't do that on the dance floor. You just clear the place out. Yeah. It's the freeness to give people the full education on the background of the music, and that's why I love radio so much, and that's why I decided to start teaching that.
It's the exact reason I get people like you on my show as well. I mean, my format of DJing may not be like, I dig the odd record out. It's more about pushing new and upcoming music and brands and stuff like that. But the reason that I get people like you and other people I've had like Breakage and Rage, legends in the scene, is to come and talk about this thing, because a lot of people often regard not just drum and bass, but a lot of kind of electronic music as something that's kind of like not to be taken seriously. It's just music, but there's a whole culture behind it, and it's a whole family, and we all live and breathe it, and people don't really understand that, and it's great. It's great to be able to talk about that and for people to get an understanding of that.
You can understand the words driving force. Yeah. I am the guy who's lost girlfriends over the music because I needed it so badly. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I had it wasn't a rant, but I put something on my Facebook recently, just because people keep trying to say, "Oh, you should do this and you should do that," and I'm like, "No, I'm doing what soothes my. This is about me, and whether I have an audience or not, this is what I'm gonna do." You know what I mean? As I, going back to ex-girlfriends, that was a problem, because it's like, you love your music too much. It's fair enough if they come over to see me and I end up playing them records for 4 hours. Yeah, I get it, but this is what I feel like. It really is something I need. I absolutely need. Yeah, like with or without any form of notoriety, this is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear. Let's kind of talk about something I find very interesting that I talk to with various people in the scene is kind of the transition of jungle to drum and bass, or vice versa. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people would say jungle came prior to drum and bass, and kind of like where that's at now. What's kind of like your thoughts of the two, or how the two are kind of cohesive as genres, or are they separated and that kind of thing?
Separated and connected. There are different kinds of people that go to each type of genre, but there are, I don't know, it's like when jungle started and it became popular because of the ragga samples, and not just those, but just the amount of things you could put into the music that would fit. Like you had Shuffle Dance putting orchestral music into it. You had people sampling cartoons, and you could put anything into it. It just had so much appeal, and it as a sound spoke of the melting pot of people in this country. So when that got popular and all the trouble started happening in the clubs, because lots of women went to these parties because of the little soulful samples that would go into certain parties and certain records, the rude boys would turn up and just create havoc, you know what I mean? So people wanted to move away from that, and I think that's how kind of drum and bass was born, not deliberately, but just like an effort to do something a little bit more different than what was happening in the clubs at that time. And this is about 95, 96 we're talking about here.
Sure.
So then you had Here Comes Bookham, you know what I mean, with this ambient sound that junglists are hating on, because it's like, what is this soft music, and it's got no vibe, and
should it be like this?
I mean, I'm not going to say he invented drum and bass, but he's definitely a big part of the turning point, and so is metalheads,
Absolutely.
You've never seen a room full of so many producers soaking up the record that they're hearing off of dubplate, which is fresh, and then going home and making something to combat and challenge that, or be more futuristic. It was such a just the energy was incredible. In terms of now, you're talking about jungle. I mean, that is just, it's kind of rehash, really. I don't want to put it down.
No, it's that what's coming out now isn't jungle. I have so many people come on this show, and
I think people got it mixed up. I think you need to listen to jungle from 95 and 94 to hear what jungle is, and then say, even I've got it mixed up a little bit just because your sample here and there.
That's it.
But it's definitely a sort of the reggae feel to it is what gives it the jungle sound. As far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
I think that's the main core of it, really. It doesn't have to be a ragga sample like Breakage now. That's jungle.
That's pure jungle. Big up to Breakage as well, man. I've got a couple more questions for you, and then we're going to move on to your guest mix. On the back end of what you've just said, this is a question that I ask a lot of people, is kind of like what your thoughts are about, how crucial diversity in not just in drum and bass, but in the dance music scene is, and just the way that various different influences interact with each other. Like your influence, for example, you came from this house and hip hop kind of background. How crucial do you think it is in people from various different cultures and various different parts of the globe coming together and in this creating this massive melting pot of music? It sounds a pretty straightforward question, but given the climate today, asking this question is a big question to ask. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
I think quite simply, it's really, really important to stand up in the room of people in theory and say, this is me and this is my experience and this is what it sounds like. There's a lot of people, I mean, as I said with DJing and stuff, it's become recognized more as a profession, and some people want to get girls or men, you know what I mean, depending on if you're a female DJ or not. Some people just want to be famous. Some people just want to get money. That's the only thing for me at the moment that is kind of sort of holding back people just being free and creative with the music. And it's very important, really important, for everybody to say, here's my influence, and show us that. Show us who you are. This is part of my rant the other day. I'm just tired of people trying to sound like the next man. Hazard will come with a bass line, then you've got 100 people trying to be like that. At the moment, it's like you've got the Benny L's and you've got Serums. Everyone's trying to copy that. It's nothing wrong with making something that is maybe less unpopular. It's important to have the variety. So everybody should be saying, here's what I do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, I completely agree with you on that. And I think it's very crucial in a scene where for things to be cohesive and people to get on and be brave to step outside the box and not just follow some kind of formulaic thing. I've got two more questions for you. One is, obviously about Soul in Motion. You've been doing that for how many years now?
Oh, it's 5 years now. 5
years, which is incredible. That's a week. For anyone that's listening now, it's a weekly drum and bass. You do 2 every week now, right?
Well, we sort of do a monthly at 93.3 East.
Yeah.
We'll do...
and then you do the weekly at the Curtain now.
No, well, that's fortnightly.
Okay.
And there's
cool.
other things that pop up in between. But yeah, I couldn't do it weekly. It would kill me. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. You obviously run that with Need for Mirrors, right?
Yes.
When did you guys first meet, and then how did the night come about?
He was a tour promoter from New Zealand.
Okay.
Back in the early 2000s, and he brought me on tour, and that's how we got to know each other.
Wow.
I toured for him, and he came and DJ'd as well on the tour as well. We did that 12 years straight every year. I'd go to New Zealand and Australia for 2 weeks, and just go Australia for a week and New Zealand for a weekend. That's how we got to know each other. And then eventually he moved to the UK and started working with record labels, and then started getting his own sort of became his own person by making his own music, and he's still here now. He's actually just recently got his citizenship, so congratulations to my boy Need for Mirrors. You know what I mean?
That's mad. That is mad. And I've seen the night pop up various times on social media, even more so word of mouth. Just like a lot of my friends are like, "Oh, you're going Soul this week," and I went for the first time. It was just a month ago, and I ran into you.
Yeah.
Because Solvent Boys, Polar and Bryson were playing, and it's a really, really good vibe. So anyone that's listening, definitely go down to a Soul in Motion. It's one to tick off the bucket list, 100%.
And it's free.
And it's free as well. Free RSVP. When's the next one, Bailey?
Oh my gosh, they're testing me. So October the 19th, I believe.
Yeah.
October the 19th, I think that is.
Yeah.
Look, just go to soulemotion.ldn.com, please. And look, because the flyers are up on there. We're doing stuff all the time. We've got stuff with Wavy Garms. We've done something with them recently at Pickle Factory. We've got another one coming with them. We've got residency in Germany. And there's always, like, venues are changing all the time. It is actually, let me tell you now how hard it is to get a venue in London.
Yeah.
Really hard. So,
bro, I know. I manage one myself. We're always turning promoters.
It's so hard to get the right what you need, and a good sound system as well.
That's it.
All the details just on the website. soulinmotionldn.com. Plug.
Loving the plug. One final question for you, Bailey, before we head into your guest mix. Can you think of an artist right now that you've had your eye on for a while, or that other people should have their eyes on, that's up and coming right now?
Mosley.
Okay.
I love the underdog. You know what I mean? I always look out. If someone sends me a tune that's like, oh, that's kind of running. Have you got any more? And he sends me more, and they're blazing as well. Then I'm kind of like, this is someone to watch. And I've been, I will help people actively if I think they've got something behind them. Breakage will tell you this. I helped him out. I helped out Heist. Rene LeVias, he'll tell you that.
Nice.
You know what I mean? I will call Dillinger and say, hey, you heard this guy next when the guy's got released. I will call Marcus Intellects. what's his name? Phil Tangent. That's how that happened for him. Marcus, this guy, listen to this. Marcus put the tunes out. Now Phil Tangent's got a career. I'm about someone who I can hear. If I can hear somebody or something in the music, I will do what I can to push that forward. That's how I operate. And at the moment for me, it's Mosley. As a matter of fact, I think I should start the mix of one of his tracks. Wow,
that sounds good. Bailey, thank you so much for coming down. It's an absolute privilege to have you here in the same room as me.
I've enjoyed
Thank you to the Reprezent crew as well. So we're going to go straight into it now. This is a Bailey guest mix. You're locked into the sounds of Paleblu on Reprezent Radio 107.3 FM.
Reprezent guest mix.
anyway. Animals anyway, so let them take those.
Reprezent in the mix. Mix. In the mix.
place you on earth.
mix.
Jesus, Bailey. You gotta warn me before you do this. Digging deep in the dubs now. Bo.
One man me praise and the Almighty Jaja. Jaja give me strength and him give me the power. That's why he got the ranking full of a stamina. Come a dance hard, me a go kill you with the lingua. Follow me no massive angle. No for your hair, cut the ranking a boom. No for your hair, cut the ranking a boom, 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 boom. For your hair, cut the ranking a boom. Kill you for your hair, cut the ranking a boom. And me say, me rock a muffin a me international. To kill a DJ, me do partial. Right and out a man, me got the credential. Now when me come a dance hall, say me well official, me got the stopper. To every DJ, them a be talk to me proper. Take a la put the ranking, go go kill them with the lingua. Till you put the ranking, full of a stamina. London, Paris, Evo, California. Down a Japan, Jamaica, down a Africa. Down a New Zealand, even in a Canada. Yes, I put the rank, they go kill you with the culture. From up every cricket, they go rule every corner. Then I put the rank, Lord, you want like a pepper. They don't find the taste that come from Shabba. One word of fun, it a come from the danger. Admiral Bailey, him a would their work. And now what they can't take it on me. Pull up a stamina.
If you just locked in to this absolute madness of breaks going on, drum and bass legend Bailey in the mix. Myself, Paleblu on Reprezent Radio 107.3 FM. We got 15 more minutes from Bailey. Make sure you keep it locked. This is an absolute madness right now. Real talk.
Check this out. We'll see if there's anything that can be done about all of this.
Represent in the mix. Mix.
I'm smiling so much that my face hurts. Wednesday night madness from Bailey. We got 10 more minutes from him in the mix. You don't want to go anywhere. Represent Radio 107.3 FM. History in the making. This is the first time in Reprezent history that I've been permitted to do this. It looks like we're running over a little bit. Bailey is going to carry on mixing past the 11 p.m. mark. Shortly after, you'll be joined by Cascade. Keep it locked, Reprezent.
Reprezent guest mix.
This is the rudest mix I've heard in years.
Paleblu.
Once again, you're locked into the sounds of Bailey in the mix on Reprezent Radio. This is the Paleblu Show. You can catch me every first Wednesday of the month. We are going to run over the 11 p.m. mark a little bit. Got about 5 more minutes of drum and bass for you. Straight after we got Cascade, you don't want to go anywhere. Keep it locked. Reprezent Radio.